Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My wife cheated and lost everything. After that, Karen mother-in-law said my chili wasn't spicy enough, so I made it spicy for her. And after that, entitled vegan roommate steals food and acts like she is the victim. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to cheat on someone. I would never cheat on you, Reddit boy. I don't care that your head looks like a balloon. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My wife cheated and lost everything. Gonna preface this by stating that this happened 3 years ago. This isn't a throwaway account, but fake names will be used. Let's start with the frame of this story. I, 27 male, grew up like most guys under the assumption that the one is out there. That if you play your cards right, your soulmate will magically appear and you'll ride off into the sunset. When I was 19, I met a woman. Let's call her Bree. I met Bree through mutual friends while I was in the army. Bree was cute, quirky, seemed like a real overall good girl. Her friend, let's call her Sam, thought it would be a great idea to get us together as a couple. Not sure what her reasons were, but I was into her and she was into me. Bree was up for a few days visiting Sam, and I had just gotten back from leave in my home state, so the meetup was inevitable. We all had lunch. Myself, Bree, Sam, and Sam's husband, let's call him Jim. This meetup was nothing spectacular, but after Bree had flown home, she messaged me on Facebook and we hit it off. After roughly 3 weeks of talking to Bree, she hit me with a very strange question. If I was pregnant, what would you do? Now, before I get to my answer, let's do the math here. She was in her party years and got around frequently. I found that out way later in the relationship. She had a boyfriend a month before meeting me. I was adopted, so accepting a kid as my own seemed like a no-brainer. My answer was what seemed like the right thing. I will love that kid as if they were my own. Well, turns out she was showing a lot of signs of pregnancy. A week later, she took the test and was positive. I stood by my word. I'll take care of this kid. There was a 3-month gap between this revelation and when she decided to fly out to me. During this gap, she was very flaky, trying to see if she could get who she thought was the dad to commit and help her to take care of her kid. He never budged. She chose me instead. Yes, I understand now why staying with her was a bad idea. I was dumb, in love, and I believed she was the one and that she had come around eventually. I married her so that the army would cover the birth and the rest should have been history. But we all know it wasn't. Year 2. 2 years in, I noticed something a bit strange. Some guy, we'll call him Ron, was liking every post she put out and commenting on every photo that had the daughter in it. This seems odd. At this point in our marriage, I had gotten out of the military and was working a job in security. One night, while working, my lizard brain connected the dots and the gut feeling followed. Now, I'm not one to act on just suspicion. I need proof. Given that I was working a nightclub that night, I would get off at 4 in the morning. She'll be asleep. She leaves her laptop on the living room couch downstairs every night before bed. The plan is coming together. I get home, head to the couch. The laptop is there. I open it and take 2 guesses at the password. It's the birth year of our daughter. I go to her Facebook. I look in messages. There it is. 6 months of conversation with a guy named Ron. Some of the conversation is flirty. Some is banter about how useless and less of a man I am. The worst part, though, was the revelation that this guy is who she feels is the biological father, and she's trying to get him involved. I scroll and scroll until I can't stomach it anymore. I grab the laptop, take it upstairs, and set it on her with the screen shining in her face. As she slowly wakes up, I say, "We're talking about this in the morning," and walked back downstairs. She normally wakes up at 7, but didn't come down until 9, probably hoping I would be asleep on the couch. She begins by saying it was only friendly talk and not technically cheating. I called BS and told her that if I see this again, I'm gone. Now, I said if, but I knew better. It would be when. This is when I set my plan in motion. I dropped out of college to get a job in my field and made sure anything that was opened up under credit was under her name. I began stating that back where I'm from has a better economy and that we'd be better off there. It took 2 years of convincing, but it worked. Nothing was under my name, and we were set to go to my hometown in 6 months. We got there in May, and I sent her home to visit the next month. I knew what she would do and who she would do it with. There was a guy we met through Sam the day before we left, and I knew immediately that she was interested in him. 3 weeks after going to visit, she started acting strange again, prioritizing other things over me, putting things off, and becoming distant. Now, I spent 2 years setting the dominoes up. I just let her knock them over. I made sure I was jobless, had nothing to my name, and was home where I could fall back on family. I pressured her into admitting that she cheated, and the dominoes tumbled. I cut all funds that were being sent to the account, drained the account to file for divorce. I had nothing, so she couldn't take half. I had no job, so what lifestyle did we have that would require giving her alimony? Everything was in her name, so even though I had financial responsibility over some of those bills, the divorce lasted long enough to destroy her credit. I gave her everything and sacrificed much to raise her kid, but in the end, she lost the most. I'm now extremely successful and valued in my career. I'm not interested in marriage, but I have no shortage of women in my life. Life is good. I still have contact with the daughter, and Bree often flirts with me trying to get me back. I'm the only dad the kid has known, and I have no intentions of becoming an ex-dad. Even though getting back with her is emotionally tempting to be with the kid more, I know better and I have better options. Edit. My kid is supported above and beyond, despite no legal requirements to do more than just the minimum. Clothes, shoes, bed, games, toys, hobbies, I pay for it all. The kid is very much involved in my life, and she is provided for. I drop everything to talk to her, and I get involved in what she loves. I don't get to see her much, but there's very little that she longs for except living with me. The kid is mine, regardless of genetics. I made that investment in her life from the start, and I'm sticking to it. I worked very, very hard to keep her isolated from this revenge. She's happy and loves her daddy very much. I don't talk crap about her mom to her, and she has a healthy relationship with both of us. Even though she wishes mommy and daddy were together, she is understanding that it's not going to happen, and I'm working very hard to make sure that the impact of that is softened. Karen mother-in-law said my chili wasn't spicy enough, so I made it spicy for her. In my last relationship, I lived with my husband, Danny, in a duplex owned by his mother, Donna. We lived on one side, and his mother and brother lived on the other side. Donna was a very horrible person and took great joy in belittling me and tormenting me every chance she got. She took extra pride in herself if she succeeded in making me cry. My ex-husband is a professional cook and would often prepare enough food for his mother in addition to ourselves. On occasions, when I would do the cooking, she also expected to be served dinner. One thing I made often was chili. Both my ex and his mother loved my chili, but both liked their chili on the spicy side. I never made my chili spicy, as I have a sensitive stomach. My ex would just add hot sauce to his serving, and that was that. But Donna would complain endlessly about the chili not being spicy, even going so far as to demand I make the next batch of chili spicy for her. I told her I wasn't going to do that because I wouldn't be able to eat it. She essentially told me that what I wanted didn't matter, since she had been gracious enough to allow me to live in her home. I told her if she wanted it spicy, she could add hot sauce to it like my ex did, or she could just make her own darn chili. So next time my ex told her I was making chili, she came over while I was making it and watched me like a hawk, demanding I add this, that, and another thing. I told her I would be making my chili the way I wanted to, and she could go home and wait for it to be done, or find something else to eat. She left, and I continued tending to my chili. Now, my ex is somewhat of a hot sauce connoisseur, and he's never met a hot sauce that was too spicy for him. So the previous Christmas, I bought him a bottle of Carolina Reaper puree. When the chili was ready, he asked me to make a Tupperware container of chili for his mother while he used the bathroom, and he'd take it to her when he was done. So, like the good little wifey I was, I put the chili into the container with a heaping tablespoon of Carolina Reaper, mixed it up really well, added some shredded cheese on top, and closed it up, ready to be delivered next door. Ex finished in the bathroom, delivered the chili, and we sat down to our meal. We had just finished, approximately 30 minutes later, when his phone rang. My ex liked to have his conversations on speaker, and I was glad of it this time.
Danny, something is wrong.
What's wrong, Mom?
This chili. Oh,
It's burning me up. What did your wife do to this chili? X looks at me confused. I just shrug. She didn't do anything to it. It's just our normal chili. What did you add to it, Mom? I added a little sriracha, but that shouldn't be hot like this. Well, maybe you added too much. That hateful jerk did something to my chili, Danny. I'm going to get her. Calm down, Ma. You're overreacting. I want her out of my house. You can't kick her out over chili, Ma. Watch me. She hung up. My ex looked at me and asked, did you really do something to her chili? I smiled sweetly and said, she wanted it spicy. It's spicy. There were no real repercussions from this other than her losing it on me. Also, she was perfectly fine and never asked for my chili again. So, bonus. Entitled vegan roommate steals food and acts like she is the victim. So I, 21 male, am in my second year of uni and I currently am rooming with 3 other people. Dan, 20 male, Max, 19 male, and Olivia, 20 female, all fake names. We all share a living area, kitchen, and of course a fridge. We all have a shelf space for our stuff and kind of share the rest of the fridge. Now in our group, I'm the only one that doesn't have any dietary requirements. Dan is gluten intolerant, Olivia is vegan by choice, and Max is mostly vegetarian because of a mixture of allergies and medical conditions. Me and Max are also in the same major and are close. When we all first moved in, Max noticed that some of his food kept getting moved to a different shelf, Olivia's shelf. Max has really bad social anxiety and doesn't do well with conflict, so he asked me to ask Olivia about it. When I did, she said she thought we had gotten the food for her because she's vegan. I explained that Max is vegetarian. I just said he's vegetarian because I didn't think it was my place to tell people about his medical conditions. She apologized and moved his food back and seemed happy to have someone else that understood. For the next few weeks, everything was fine. She did get a bit pushy every now and then with Max, saying that meat is the hard part and how easy it would be to stop eating milk and eggs, etc. Yesterday, we all decided to order takeout. We ordered Chinese. There's a beef-based dish that not only can Max eat, but it's also his favorite. So we got a portion for the group as well as one just for Max. We sat down and started eating, and when Olivia saw Max eating the dish, she went to get some. Max quickly stopped her and told her that it had beef in it. She sat there and blinked a few times before asking why he was eating it then. Max sheepishly replied that he can eat this dish. She started yelling that he can't make exceptions to veganism and vegetarianism when he feels like it. Max explained that he's vegetarian because of medical reasons. Olivia told him that he shouldn't call himself a vegetarian then, quickly filled her plate and went to her room. Today, Olivia refused to talk to anyone and would leave the room if Max came in. Max was clearly upset. I asked Dan to take him out somewhere while I talked to Olivia because I couldn't promise she wouldn't yell again. They left and I knocked on Olivia's door and asked to talk. She let me in and I told her that the way she's been treating Max is not okay. She said she felt lied to. She thought she had someone who cared about the same things that she did. I told her that it's okay to feel that way, but that's not Max's fault and what she's doing is wrong. She yelled at me, saying it was in fact Max's fault for misappropriating the label vegetarian and started comparing it to crimes. I shut that down right away and left to join Dan and Max, who had gone to the arcade. When we, me, Max, and Dan, got back, the place was a mess. Max's stuff had been thrown into the living area. This also included some of his gaming equipment and medical stuff, which had been damaged. Any meat product had been opened and thrown in the trash. Empty milk cartons in the sink, which were full, so I think she tipped them. Her shelf in the fridge was empty and anything that was vegan friendly. So most of Max's food, but also some of Dan's food, was also gone. There were 2 rooms on one side and 2 rooms on the other, and she and Max's rooms were next to each other. We called our RA, and she was really nice and calm, probably because Max was crying at this point. She said she would talk to Olivia and would probably have her moved because this wasn't appropriate. We're hoping she gets moved. She hasn't been back yet today. We just finished moving Max's stuff into Dan's room and setting up a fusion just in case. We literally did our food shop a few days ago, so we don't really have enough money to replace anything. Anyway, sorry, this was a bit of a rant. Maybe you guys should call the police and tell them there's a wild vegan on the loose. You're really just going to stand there? I'm from South Louisiana, and we have a different way of interacting with people that differs even from other southern states. I'm sure people know about the southern hospitality, but South Louisiana cranks this up to 11. Ask anyone who has ever been there. We don't care about race, religion, social, or economic status. If you're human, you are owed to be treated with kindness and empathy until you prove otherwise. I left Baton Rouge and moved to Katy, Texas for a teaching gig. It was a Sunday, and I had to run to the Texas-only big grocery chain to get a few things. Sunday was a big shopping day, and the place was packed with long lines waiting to check out. I walked to the closest line with my few groceries in my arms. This was before the prominence of self-checkout, so no matter how much or how little you bought, there was going to be a wait. It's just how things were. No biggie. The lady in front of me had to be in her 80s and not more than 95 pounds. Her buggy was absolutely filled to the top. The people in front of her were almost done checking out when I saw her struggling to pick up a bag of frozen chicken to place on the conveyor. She struggled again with another item, and another, and another. The cashier started ringing her up and simply stared at her with impatience while this poor old woman struggled with removing items from her buggy. I was like, what the heck? I looked around and everyone was sighing with annoyance and impatience. The bagger, the cashier, the people behind me. Seriously? I placed my items down on a nearby drink refrigerator and asked the lady if she needed any help. With a brightness and joy in her eyes, she answered, "Please." I unloaded her buggy onto the conveyor and placed the bagged groceries back in as the bagger handed them to me. I was finished in no time, smiled at the lady, picked my items back up, and got back in line behind her. She paused for a moment. Evidently, she had been so flustered with trying to place her groceries on the conveyor, she had never noticed me behind her. "Wait, you don't work here?" "No, ma'am. Just thought you might appreciate a little help." She then gave me the biggest hug, and with tears in her eyes, she said, "Thank you. Thank you so much." I smiled again and told her, "You're welcome." I followed her out to her vehicle and helped her load everything. She thanked me again and told me she dreaded going to the grocery store because it was so difficult for her, and people were always getting frustrated with her when it came to checking out. I shook my head. That is sad. I'm sorry about that. Back home, stuff like that doesn't happen. If someone needs help, we help them. She started to tear up again, hugged me, and thanked me. I told her to have a nice day and headed back to my truck. My heart feels so warm right now. It won't after we read this next one. Entitled relatives think they deserve more than my adopted son. To give some context here, I must say that I'm an IT engineer with toxic family relationships. I did cut off my father and my uncles and aunts, yet I keep in contact with my cousins and their kids, which somehow I treat as mine, as I had none and I'm an only child. Therefore, it's the closest I got. I always prioritize success over relationships, so I'm single, and through the years I felt that my cousins' kids weren't mine, therefore I wanted to raise one of my own. It took me some time, but finally I adopted an 8-year-old, as those usually age out of foster care. I love the experience of raising a kid, yet I have had to deal with some entitledness from my cousins. It turns out that every now and then I usually spend some money traveling with my cousins and their kids. Yet this year, for obvious reasons, I need to save money in order to get all of the stuff my son would need, and I'm planning on going big, the best of the best I can afford. I just explained this to my cousins and told them this year our trip together will be canceled. They said nothing, so I thought they understood the whole situation. Anyway, I wanted my kid to socialize with my cousin's kids, so I invite them all to a get-together party. After about 2 months, when my son felt comfortable enough. And somehow, all of the kids were so mad and refused to play with my kid. He just sat in a corner and tried to not cry, but he did. I just talked with the kids, and they said he was not part of the family and they deserve more, as he's adopted, and they, as my family, were entitled to the trip to the parks in Florida. I was in shock and asked them where they got that from, and they told me how their parents have told them the reason why I took their trip was my son, who comes from the streets and isn't even family. I was fuming, so I told them all to leave. I had a Zoom meeting with just my cousins who told me that their kids must come first, and I told them they made me realize my son comes first, so I canceled their college funds, their private school tuitions, and just told them that if my kid is not part of their family, neither am I, and they were cut off. I've been called unreasonable, but I think my son comes first, and I made the right decision. You want things done by the book? All right, let's do that. I work as a freelance artist doing advertisement, ticket, and program booklet designs for various police and firefighter events that give to children's charities. It's not consistent work, but it pays pretty well for what it is. The people I work with directly are a promotions company that was created to sell the advertisement space and tickets. I've been working for them for a long time. Throughout lockdown, these people were essentially my only source of income, so I had to put up with their BS. Mostly having to put up with having to hear, "The check is in the mail," for 2 or 3 months before it actually arrives. I convinced the owner of the company to download PayPal so I could be paid in a reasonable time. He was confused on how to use it, so I told him about Cash App. I was paid through Cash App only once before he said, "I just want to keep doing this by the book. These websites you're sending me look scammy." And because I don't work for him, I work for the unions and they're the ones cutting the checks. I asked him if he really wants to do that, and of course he said yes. Cue malicious compliance. He's becoming quite upset with me since he realized doing it by the book actually gives me all of the leverage. From that point forward, I had begun putting my logo watermark on every single thing I sent him. The first time he experienced this was with show tickets. He asked me to remove the watermark and send it to the printers. He was satisfied with the work. I told him the watermark will come off when there is money in my account. He told me that he can't start making sales until he has the tickets to sell. Thus, he doesn't have the money to pay me. Oh man, that sucks. Better figure out how to pay me electronically then. Here's my wallets, PayPal, and Cash App info, as well as info for direct deposit. He insisted he couldn't pay me before he has the tickets, so he agreed to a 50% price increase for me to release the files to him without pay, and with the company's logo on them. I actually got paid for that today. The second time was with a show poster. The same instance occurred, only this time I was told I'd have to talk to the Fraternal Order of Police about being paid since I work for them. They were very confused when I called them. An hour later, I got an angry phone call and was paid via direct deposit from the promoter's business account, not the FOP's account. This morning was pretty interesting. He called me up while meeting with the police association to talk about cutting me a check for the last show that happened yesterday. On this call, I was asked about bank transfers, asked how to make a wallet, all that good stuff. But the promoter asked why my invoice stated that I'm no longer accepting checks as a form of payment. "Are you sure you want me to answer that in this meeting?" I asked him. He said yes. So I told him while he was on speakerphone with his boss, "Because you don't pay me for months when we do checks. I only accept online or bank transfers." There was a little back and forth between him and the guy from the police association. It didn't sound like Mr. Promoter was having a good time. I was told I would get a call back about payment. Well, I received that call from the police association, not the promotion agency. I've been paid via PayPal and apologized to profusely. When I got the call from the promoter afterward, he had a very upset tone. He asked why I'm doing all this. "Well, sir, you told me you wanted it done by the book, right? This is by the book. We didn't do it by the book before because I've worked with you for years and your son is my best friend, so this is how it will be from now on. We'll see how it turns out. I'm confident I won't be losing any work since the police associations, firefighters, and other organizations have repeatedly told me how great my work looks and how I often work at half the price of other freelancers." How I got my boss fired when he tried to fire me. Starting out, let me explain why there wasn't a mass walkout and why I am the only one that quit despite us basically being terrorized at work. The job market was in shambles in my city at that time, with something like a 40% unemployment rate. I knew someone with a doctorate degree in theoretical physics working at a local fast food joint, as it was literally the only place hiring. The city had quick access to 4 research universities, but he got downsized due to lower admission rates. He is now the dean of the physics department at his former school. To quit any job, no matter how bad, was not smart and a guarantee that you would not find a new one. I always worked customer service, food service, and hospitality since I was 14. At 24, I decided it was time to find a job with benefits and potential for career advancement, so I took a job stocking shelves overnight with a global monstrosity that started out as a mom-and-pop store. I felt right at home. I worked hard and constantly took the worst jobs and the worst days off to make sure I would be there on the weakest staffing days to rub elbows with management. If there was anything that occasionally came up that no one on the shift was trained to do, I would come in on my day off, without pay, to get trained how to do the task, like keys, paint, accounting issues, etc., to become less disposable and more versatile. It worked, and 10 months in, I found myself with an offer to promote to low-level management starting January 1st. Starting the weekend before Thanksgiving, the overnight manager started to understaff shifts to preserve his end-of-year bonus and acted surprised when people called out. He would then bully us into staying over with threats of write-ups for not finishing our assigned stocking tasks. Upper management was notorious for just signing off on write-ups without looking into their validity, so each staff being assigned 13 plus hours of labor to complete alone in 6 hours, while typically it was approximately 4.5 hours to account for tending to customers as well, was no defense. Since an employee could only get 2 of those write-ups in a rolling 13-month period before termination, we all would stay over as well as skip our breaks and lunches to finish. Those write-ups were also less job-threatening, as he would simply turn a blind eye to us clocking out for break/lunch and returning to work. But there was a catch. Since any approved overtime would count against his $73,000 bonus, approximately 11 cents per approved hour, he would never file the approval forms for the overtime. This meant that it was considered unapproved, meaning that we were required to get approval to cut hours off our regular shifts to equal out what we stayed for. He, of course, never approved us to cut these hours. This was resulting in weekly write-ups from the same manager for unapproved overtime on those of us that made it to work every day despite the weather and missed holiday get-togethers with our families. Every week we would get our write-up and he would get praise for getting everything done with less approved staffing hours than typically allocated. Thankfully, write-ups for unapproved overtime didn't carry a lot of weight, but for 3 months they counted against your points for promotion opportunities. This went on until a week before Christmas. When I got my weekly write-up, I was told by the store manager, who offered me my position, I would be suspended for overtime abuse the next time my manager submitted a write-up for unapproved overtime hours. Determined to not lose my promotion, I started telling the manager no. The second time I refused to stay over without him signing an overtime approval form and giving me a physical signed copy before I hit overtime, he wrote me up for abusive actions towards a member of management and actions with intent to undermine the integrity of management and store policies. This instantly cost me my promotion, which greatly upset me. And then, like the idiot he is, he left me alone in his office to sign the write-ups and the acknowledgement that I was no longer promoting. Initially, I was going to just accept it and resolve myself to spending the next 13 months working my tail off for minimum wage and go up for promotion as soon as they fell off. When I started reading the acknowledgement form, I found I was not eligible to promote to management until I was write-up free for 5 years. This meant 6 years and 1 month before I could even try to get promoted again, all because I followed policy. So rather than sign it, I wrote "Buzz Off" in Sharpie across his brand new desk, which he got for being such a great manager, walked out of his office, handed him my vest and name tag, shredded the write-ups, and tossed them into the air like confetti, and told his no longer smug face that it was now my personal mission to get him fired. He lost his attitude when it sunk in I just quit. I could see little beads of panic sweat forming on his forehead as he realized that the only person capable of performing certain highly essential functions for his shift was walking out the door. He shouted after me, telling me that he could talk to the general manager and see if he could get the time frame cut down to 3 years. He offered to approve all of my overtime the rest of the season, offered me a cut of his bonus, and several other offers I can't remember. Honestly, if he had offered to withdraw the write-ups, which was still 100% an option, but he never offered, I would have accepted it, but I might not have followed through on my threat. I was too angry and too determined, and I didn't care if I became homeless, as long as I never had to work there again. Now, how did I get him fired? Well, due to certain ADA requirements, I was permitted to carry a voice recorder with me at work so I could record important meetings, announcements, and reminders. When I got written up the first time for unapproved overtime, I started recording his requests to both me and coworkers. I never used them to dispute the write-ups, but I never deleted them either. So I uploaded all the recordings to my computer, nearly 18 hours of audio, and sent it to the home office, CCing every store manager and compliance officer in the district. When I went in for my last paycheck, he was long gone. I was offered my promotion back, but I declined. The regional director then offered me my old manager's job with a $73,000 hiring bonus. Wonder where that came from. But I still refused and said I was never returning to retail. My former manager's boss laughed and told me that everyone returns eventually, and when I did come see her, she would find me a management spot somewhere. After 5 months of being unemployed, living with my mom, and barely surviving, I moved to another state and got a job working in a state prison as a guard, and am very fulfilled. Have you ever had a boss you couldn't stand? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I've never had a boss because I've never had a job. Click this button to join as a channel member and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next, the one that just popped up on the screen.